Hey everyone, welcome to the Slingshot Group podcast. I'm your host, Tim Foote, CEO of Slingshot Group, where we build remarkable teams through staffing and coaching. And today I'm joined by Jackie Brewster. And I think you're going to love this conversation because Jackie is all about helping individuals, couples, and teams discover who they are and how to grow towards health through the Enneagram tool and biblical truth. Now, you might be thinking, oh, the Enneagram tool, this is a tired conversation. Well, trust me, it's not. I got new things out of this conversation, not just about the tool, but how to grow in self-awareness as a leader as I lead my team. Because our passion and focus at Slingshot Group is not just you, the leaders serving churches and nonprofits, but it's the leader of healthy teams. Because if you're leading a team that's healthy, that energizes you leading them, then you are going to stay on mission and you're going to move forward faster as we build the kingdom together. So take a listen to this. Well, Jackie, we just love the work you're doing to help individuals and teams be the best version of themselves that they can be. And let's acknowledge right up front that when some listeners hear the word Enneagram, some are leaping with joy while others are rolling their eyes. Now, I hope the rolling their eyes people are still watching or listening. But what I love about how you approach this is that the Enneagram is just a tool, right? Give us some context on how you see it.
The Enneagram is just a tool. So I care about health, growth, and transformation. And so as a Christian, transformation happens with the help of the Holy Spirit. So the Enneagram helps us to see parts of ourselves, like it gives us a GPS into the story behind the scenes of our lives. And so it like we encounter parts of ourselves that maybe we didn't even know were there or had been buried, or maybe we're confused. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. Is this true about me? Am I functioning from this place? And then I dive into the why, because if we can acknowledge it, we can change it. And so it's just a tool for us to grow in self-awareness. But the benefit of that is self-awareness then leads to empathy and compassion for others. And so it is like a very full picture if you use it in that way. So I'm not interested in the Enneagram as a label maker. So I want this to be a tool for health and growth, not like a label.
So as a refresher for those people listening today, the leaders listening, or a starting point for our listeners, what do we need to know about the Enneagram? And can you give us a quick overview? I know this is a tough task, but a quick overview of the 9 numbers or types.
Yes. So I think what's helpful to know with the Enneagram is that there's 9 different personalities, 9 different ways of viewing the world, and it's chocked full of information. So, it's why we do what we do, not what we're doing. So it's motivation, not behavior. So when we look at people and we want to type people, we shouldn't, because we don't know the motivation behind the behavior. And types can look similar, but the motivation is different. And so we want to be careful around just kind of nailing people into certain, situations or whatever. So that's one of the things with the Enneagram that I think is important. Now, if we look at the types, so there is 9 types. So you've got the Enneagram 1, who is known as the more perfectionist or the reformer. I've got people that prefer that name, but they are the ones that are like, I want to do what's right. I want to be seen as good and right in the eyes of other people. I don't want to make mistakes. And so that's their focus of attention. Like, I don't want to make mistakes. I want to do things the right way the first time. So oftentimes there is a more rigid approach to situations, but it does not mean that they're a perfectionist in all areas of their life. It's usually driven towards certain things. So if we look at the Enneagram 2, they're the supportive advisor. Some people will call them the helper. I find that with my 2, supportive advisor fits much better because they don't want to help everybody. They want to help the people they want to help, but it's not like an overarching helping situation. But they want to know that they're loved and wanted, or needed and wanted in the workplace. And so that's, they're trying to figure that out with the group. So it's like, okay, where do I fit in this? What matters to you guys? And then it should matter to me if it matters to you. So there is kind of this dance that happens with the 2. But that's, when we're thinking about them, it's not overarching. It's really kind of like leaning in towards the people that they're trying to help. The 3 is the achiever, the driven achiever. I don't think we need another title for that one. I think it's just what it is, driven achiever. They are fast paced movers. They want things to, they want to make a big impact on the world. They are drivers. They have the ability to kind of shift and be what people need in different environments, which I think is a blessing unless it becomes used in the wrong way. But I really do think that there's a gift inside of that to be able to read the room, to be able to adapt, to be able to lean in and listen. But those driven achievers, they make things happen. They oftentimes like the stage or they like to be a part of something big. So the Enneagram 4, the romantic individualist, these people oftentimes get kind of an interesting wrap around emotion. Like, oh, they're in their feels all the time. And I work with a lot of 4s. I'm raising a 4. And interesting enough, my daughter the other day, she was like, I think you need to know something about this personality type. And I was like, what is that? She's like, just because we feel all the feelings, it doesn't mean we want to. It doesn't mean we want to sit in this. It means that we feel it. And then what are we going to do with it? And so I thought that was super interesting to hear her talk about that from that. But the Enneagram 4s, they do feel a lot. They see a lot. They see the world in a different way. They want to hold space for people to be different. That individualist is so important to them. I love that personality type. I think there's so many of them around me. My husband is in music business. And so there's a lot of 4s in our world. Mm-hmm. And then the Enneagram 5 is the investigative thinker. They oftentimes, they don't need a lot of social interaction. They kind of pull away. They want to dive into topics of interest to them. They want to investigate and figure out and think through a lot of things. They oftentimes have information about a lot of different things. Right? A little bit about a lot, and then kind of narrow in on something that they're really, really interested in. But the way that they sit in the world is a little bit different as far as energy level. They want to conserve energy for the things that they love to do. Our Enneagram 6s, those are the loyalists. And again, they get kind of a bad rap too around being anxious. They're like the scaredy cats. And I work with a lot of 6s, and that is not necessarily true. They're really, really courageous. They're cautiously courageous. And I think that that's a really great way to think about the 6. Instead of them being scared or afraid, it's cautiously courageous. They are the brake to a lot of the gas pedal in our teams, because they want to vet things and make sure that we've thought through all the situations before we just run and go. So this can cause a little conflict in those leadership roles, especially if you've got some drivers in the seat of leadership, and then you've got an Enneagram 6 that's like, hold on, wait a minute, let's slow this down. It can be like, I don't want to slow it down, but we'll see that. We can talk about more about that even later. So Enneagram 7 is the enthusiast. I'm an Enneagram 7. So we see the world through like adventure and fun and possibility. And they are visionaries that can see how all these different pieces and components can kind of fit together and make something great. And they want to be a part of that. They have high woo. They want to bring people along with them. Like, we can do this. Come on. So it's really fun, there's other sides to the 7 too, but there's a lot of energy with the 7. With the Enneagram 8, they are our protective challengers. We feel an 8. Like, you feel the energy of an 8 typically before you even meet them. You can feel them oftentimes when they enter a room, the dynamic shift within the room. There's a lot of power with that 8 for a lot of reasons that sit below the surface. But they like to be in control. They do. But this is what they say to me, is that I want to be in control of anything that has the potential to control me. So they don't necessarily want to control other people. They just don't want to be controlled by other people. So that is an interesting take on it. That's different, I think, than what we oftentimes think of that 8. But they are big picture thinkers, and they make things happen. They move really fast. So when I'm coaching an 8, I'm always like, we got to get your feet on the ground, because they're like, let's go. A lot of movement in that personality type. And then the Enneagram 9 is the peacemaker. And I'll emphasize the maker side of this. Peacemaker. I want movement with my Enneagram 9s, not a peacekeeper. So peacemakers, there's movement, there's intentionality. They hold space for people well. They see all sides of a situation. They're really good in conflict. They don't love conflict, but because they can see all sides of a situation, they're really good at navigating conflict and in like hard conversations. So
Mm.
that's the numbers in a nutshell.
That's amazing, Jackie. Notice I didn't interrupt you because
You
you're
didn't.
doing such a fantastic job at outlining all the types. Now, many listeners will know their type. You'll know that many listeners refuse to work out what their types are.
Mm-hmm.
And there'll be some that are intrigued to know what their type is and
Mm-hmm.
may have even identified with one of the types as
Mm-hmm.
you listed it.
Mm-hmm.
What's your advice for the best way to work out what your primary type is?
Okay, I have two thoughts on it. So, I refer all of my clients or anybody that asks me this question to an online test that I trust, and that's the Ready test, RHETI.
Mhm.
That test I trust. Now, what I would
That's my favorite test too, by the way.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
it's just direct and to the point, you
Mhm.
know. What I would say about this test, however, is that any personality typing system that you're going to use, whether it's this or Myers-Briggs or any, working genius, anything that you're going to use right here, is that they're only about 75% accurate. I don't even know, if how accurate that number is, but it's because it's not a blood test. So you're
Mm.
answering to your level of awareness, and if you're answering honest or you're answering according to what you want people to think about you or see you as. So there's a lot of room in there to be mistyped if we're
Mm.
looking at it like that. So I like people to take a test so we have a jumping off point. And then from there, I want a more narrative approach to it where we're going to look at it. We're going to dig into the content of each of the types that seem to be your top and see what's true about those. And then where does motivation meet behavior, not behavior meet motivation? I want to
Mm.
flip it. So where does that, why are you doing it is more important than what you're doing.
We could spend 2-3 hours talking about wings and triads and where
Oh
you
my
go and
gosh.
help and unhelp and all
Yes.
that stuff. And I'm hoping we have more conversations, Jackie.
Yeah.
But restate what you said, that it's not a label, it's a
The Enneagram, it's not a label maker. It
that's
is a
right.
tool for self-awareness and growth.
That's
And
right.
when we're looking at it through that lens, it should feel exposing
Mm.
and it should feel validating. Both of those should be true when you get your
And
number.
And Jackie, we've found that one of the top attributes in successful and healthy leadership is, of course, self-awareness. I'm sure you know the Thomas Kempis quote where he says, "A humble self-knowledge is a surer way to guide than deep learning." And some of the most frustrating moments in my life and career have been working with people who lack self-awareness. And and we both know that you can get a job or lose a job based on your level of self-awareness. Now,
Absolutely.
everyone is prone to blind spots, and we all have seasons where we're hopefully healthy and thriving, but we also have times where we're unhealthy and we're struggling. How have you seen the Enneagram help people to become more self-aware?
So I see clients, that's what I do full time is I see clients over Zoom.
Mm.
And as I start the process with them, we start having conversations around childhood messaging and things like that, and we start to dive into the content, and they encounter parts of themselves. And it's slow, and I ask questions, and watching like the clicks that happen in I probably see it in their eyes, but in their brain, it's like, what? Wait a minute, where does this come from? Hold on, like it's the realization of that. And then when we start to go through the not so beautiful sides of their personality type, which blind spots shadow side is oftentimes what I'm looking at with my clients too. After we get into some work, it's like, what's the shadow side? What are you, how you think you're being perceived versus how you're actually being perceived,
Mm.
like those two things. And that's that shadow work. And where does it come from and why? So what I find is that when fear and worry enter the picture of somebody's story, which it all does, that is the average
Mm.
range of our personality. When we are functioning in autopilot, we're functioning from this place of like, what is coming at me and what am I supposed to do about it? So when I say fear and worry in the, in as a Christian, it's like you're not supposed to have fear and things like that. I totally understand that, but we have to face the reality of where we're at. And
Mm,
so there's a book called The Wisdom of the Enneagram by Don Rizzo and Russ Hudson that I use, and it gives you 9 levels of health. And inside of that, when I hit that average range, that's fear and worry. And when I bring people through that, they begin to see like, oh my gosh, I do that all the time.
mm,
And then I'm like, but where does it come from? And we can trace it. And then they can start to put connections together that then transformation happens out of that place. Because it's like,
mm.
oh, because if you know better, you can do better, right? If you
Yeah.
can acknowledge it, you can change it. And so it takes, I do think it takes an encounter
Mm,
with reality for them to be able to say, like, oh, that's not normal. Like,
yeah.
oh, I should do it different. And then what does it look like to do it different?
Mm. If you know better, you can do better. I mean, that line in itself is the case for deepening our level of self-awareness, and Enneagram is the best tool that I know, and there are so many out there. So let me take advantage of some free coaching from you now,
Let's do it.
Jackie. So you'll be impressed to know that I first took the Enneagram 30 plus years ago when
Wow.
I
Mhm.
began in ministry and began my career. I was on a team,
Mhm.
a ministry team. I was by far the youngest,
Mhm.
and they were big fans of the Enneagram and deepening self awareness. I tested way back then as a 2. I probably did the test again 10, 15 years later, tested again as a 2. I've done it recently with the team, with my own team that I lead, tested as a 2.
Mhm.
So I'm probably a 2.
Mhm.
It's interesting with the Ready because they score you at your top types, and
Right.
that's stayed pretty static as well. My 3 has moved up a little
Mhm.
because of how the role has changed. It's pretty unusual for a 2 to lead an organization. Uh, would you
Mm.
say?
Um, well, there's the social too. So the subtypes, the Enneagram is broken down into 27 different subtypes inside of each number. There's 3 different ways that the number can show up. So a social 2 has a lot of 3 tendencies. So when I'm looking at that, I have to be really mindful on that on the typing side. Is it a 3-2 or 2-3
Mm-hmm.
because of
Right.
that social component? If you are deep into that social 2, then I see a lot of leadership.
Mm,
But it's
interesting.
specific to that subtype.
So, as a
Mhm.
leader of a team, what
Mhm.
do I need to watch out for being a 2? How do I stay
Mm.
healthy? What do I
Mhm.
watch out for in unhealth?
So unhealth, for the Enneagram 2, when we see them go towards that unhealth, it usually is they've given a lot, they've done a lot, they've tried to please a lot, they've taken on a lot of responsibility, and they feel like, don't you see everything I'm carrying? Don't you see what I've done for you? Don't you guys see? How come you guys are not helping? How come you're not lifting the load? Why am I not feeling this reciprocated? So that is one of those red flags for the Enneagram
Check.
2.
Check. I'm checking all those boxes
Yeah.
for you. And
Yeah.
my team listening is checking those boxes too, I'm sure. They see it in
Yeah.
my face sometimes.
Yes. So it's like, I need to know that I'm wanted in my environment. And so I'm really paying attention to how the team is responding to me, reacting to me. The Enneagram 2 is very attuned to other people's facial expressions, body languages, eye rolls, sighs, all the things. And so, depending on where you are in your health journey on this, right? So if you're healthy and you can see that, you're able to process it in a way that's like, this is probably not about me, it's probably about them. If you are in that lower average to unhealthy space, you're
Mm,
seeing them shift, which then causes you to become anxious. Then we're going to see a more prickly side of the 2 exposed, and maybe even a more assertive or aggressive side of the 2. Maybe it's demanding, even, and it can cause everybody to kind of be like, what just happened? This is so not like them. But it's this fear around losing connection that happens with the
mm,
2. Fear of, if you can see a shift happen, you feel the room shift and they're not on board with you on an idea, you might try to figure out how to get them back on board,
mm,
by, being a little bit more assertive or
Yeah.
proving your point. Some things like that will happen.
I probably need to book a session with you, Jackie, because now you're reading my mail during the podcast, which I knew you wouldn't. I'm glad you are. Sometimes self-awareness hurts, and it
Oh
means
gosh.
getting in touch and
Yes.
aware of things that you may not love
Mhm.
about yourself. But you would say that self-awareness leads us to greater health.
Oh gosh, yeah. Mhm.
How might knowing the things that you listed about
Mhm.
me help me
Mhm.
be more self-aware in leading a team, more mindful of when
Mhm.
I'm in a healthy or unhealthy place?
Yeah. So if we look at, so that's kind of the lower side. If we look at the high side of the two, and we understand that in the high side of the two, there's this realization that I am loved for who I am by Christ. And so I don't have
Mm,
to earn your love, try to win it, try to all the things that the Enneagram 2 is trying to do. Like, how do I get you to love me, want me, value me, respect me, all the things that are happening inside of that. And so when you understand who you are and that there's purpose behind what you're doing, there is a surrender to the Lord in that. And
mm,
then it's like I can be at peace with knowing that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So there is
mm,
that piece of it. In the growth side of it, it you guys are able to say your needs without feeling needy. So you
mm,
can say, "Hey guys, we've got this really big project. I've got a lot on my plate, and I need some extra hands in
mm,
this." Where
mm,
if you're not in the healthiest place, you don't want to necessarily expose that you can't do it all. So it can
mm.
feel a little three-ish in that even, but you take a lot on at the cost of you when
Yeah.
you're not healthy. When you are healthy, you're willing to ask for help and understand that there's healing in that surrendered place.
It's hard for twos to ask for help,
Mhm.
Jackie.
Oh,
The
it's so
word
hard.
that comes the word that comes to me when you're talking about this is freedom. I mean, learning these things about ourselves is a pathway to freedom. Why do you think people are reticent to dive into the Enneagram or learn their type? What do you think stops people? It's probably specific types, but what do you think stops people?
Um, Probably like I remember years ago around personality stuff, I was like, yeah, I'm not interested. I don't want people to know about me or think that they know me without
Mm,
knowing me. So I was like resistant to this type of work. Then I started doing this work and I was like, oh my gosh, it was eye opening. I think fear of what they'll find. They don't have time. What's the point? There's a lot of that, like, what good is it going to do
mm,
me? And what I would say is that I see life transformation happen daily through the work that I do with clients. It is remarkable. I was with a team last week and I've been doing a ton of work with their leader. And I just happened to be in the green room with all of them, working on some stuff before my flight. And one of the guys sat down next to me and he's like, mentioned the leader, and he just said, "There's just such a huge difference in this guy over the past year and a half. It's just
mm,
so crazy." And the leader started laughing, and he's like, "I've been working so hard in self-awareness over the past year and a
mm,
half." And the whole team is like, "We can totally see a difference." So he leads different. There's less of a lead out of insecurity and more out of confidence in who he is and the role that he plays on the team. And
mm,
so, but I do think it's fear, fear of or lack of time or value of the process. Or, I mean, if we're really honest, like self awareness, I've been around the church for a long time, 25 years, nobody's talking about this, 15 years
mm,
ago.
mm.
They
Yeah.
weren't. We were just all trying to like figure this thing out. So kind of, I feel like it's louder and more present today
Mm,
than it's been. In this
yeah.
next generation coming up, they're way more hungry and
Mm.
and willing to look at things than my generation was.
Yeah, I would say to leaders listening, don't put this off. Take steps
Mm.
towards self awareness
Mhm.
for the sake of your mission and your team.
Yes.
I mean, we work with so many non-profit, faith forward non-profits
Mhm.
and churches, and we've
Mhm.
seen how powerful this tool can be
Mhm.
in keeping the team healthy. It's interesting,
Mhm.
Jackie. I've got a team of 8, including me, that I lead our exec team at Slingshot, and I'm a 2. As I said, we've got 3 1s, 2 3s. One of the 3s, I think, is an 8. a 6,
Mhm.
and a 7. So we
Mhm.
are quite
Mhm.
a diverse team,
Yes.
men and
Mhm.
women,
Mhm.
different personalities, different types.
Mhm.
So often, though, we have to counsel in our staffing work teams to be focused on not hire people who are the same as them. Even Jesus, who could have done his ministry on his own, of course, chose to work with a team, and notably a team that was extremely different from each other. And it's the uniqueness and differences that so often make us a better team. Yet it's those differences that cause the most tension for us in working well
Right.
together. So, how can we balance creating healthy teams where everyone isn't the same, but they still have chemistry and work better together?
I think that's a great question. Isn't like I think I encounter that a lot. I help people when they go to do their hiring. So some of the people I work with have me help them with that, like understand their Enneagram type and how they're going to work together with the team. Is it a good fit? So I think diversity is key because we all bring different pieces into a situation. We all see things differently. There's extra and added value to different personality types within the team. So I think it's essential. What I think that the Enneagram offers around this is empathy and compassion. So what I would say though is you have to do your work first. This isn't about you learning about other people so that you know how to work with them or control them or whatever that is. This is really you learning about you. And from that place flows empathy towards other people because you're like, oh, I do this because of X, Y, and Z. Well, they probably do what they're doing because of their own X, Y, and Z story. And so it softens things in the workplace. It helps to have the conversations that may be difficult around differences because you understand like you're coming at it in a different way. So I'm an Enneagram 7. I'm married to an Enneagram 3. And on our team, because we have different focuses, but we work with some of the same people on our teams. And we have a 5, we have another 3, we have a 1. Um, there's another person, I don't know his type, but when I look at all of them, I can see the role that they play and they're not like us. So my Enneagram 5, my project manager, he's not like me, but I don't want him to be like me. I'm too visionary. I have too many ideas. I need him to harness the ideas and make things happen for me. My Enneagram 1, she keeps me on board. Like she's like, I need this from you. So I need those different people in my life. Do I like it? No, I want to be free and do whatever I want. Right. But when I'm thinking through, how do I make this business the best it can be? How do I be productive? I have to think about the roles that I need. I need all these different people to make this thing run. And so that we can achieve what we want to achieve. My husband is the same way as a 3 super driver. He needs people to ground him. He needs people to
Mm,
do the hard work, and they do it different. But
mm,
if we have an understanding of who they are and how they function, we get way less irritated when
mm.
things don't go how we think that they should. Cause we're like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe I should ask about that before I just assume.
Yeah, yeah. So often my wife and my therapist, Jackie, are reminding me it's not my job to save the world.
Oh, not your job. Not your job.
it's it's
Not your
it's
job.
not my job to save the world.
No.
Yeah, so insightful.
Mhm.
And as I think about how we lead our teams, it's
Mhm.
so important for us to lean deeper into self awareness
Mhm.
and also to embrace the messiness of
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
team and our
Mhm.
differences.
Mhm.
Being in the people business for so long now, for both of us,
Mhm.
I'm learning
Mhm.
that it's tension that moves ministry
Mhm.
forward.
Mhm.
It's our job to monitor whether or not it's healthy or unhealthy tension.
Right.
And it's
Right.
often the mess that leads us to the
Mhm.
best kind of
Mhm.
results. But it's probably safe to say that the vast majority of people listening to this conversation right now are struggling with someone. And
Mhm.
that someone may be an employee, a peer, a boss, or even a spouse.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
help us with this, Jackie.
Mhm. Mhm. My gosh. So, I was just having a conversation with a leader yesterday that I coach, and she was having some tension inside the workplace with some of her employees, and it's a church, so it's ministry, and so she was feeling the weight of it. We talk about like, where do you feel it in your body? Like the heaviness, it's on her shoulders. She feels like she's carrying it, and I just reminded her that that we can lift the heavy burden to the Lord, that He can carry so we can care. So if we can lift the heavy burden of it up, and we can be prayerful, and we can bring things to the Lord and ask Him, hey, I need you to carry the heaviness, the weightiness of all of this that I feel like is on my shoulders, so that I can care for the people. Give me eyes to see, give me a heart open to understanding these people that you've entrusted me with. I think that some of the lift inside of this is like, we've got to remember that what we do is spiritual. So we've been around church for a long time, and so you get used to doing the work of church, and you forget sometimes that the relationship with the Lord is the most important thing first. And so that surrendered self to the Lord, and understanding where you're coming from first, and then how do you carry the team. But I do think it's the posture that we go into things with, and why. And so, when I think about the messiness of teams and the messiness of people, a couple things kind of go through my mind. Are you okay if I share a couple things that go through my mind? Okay. So one of the things is that human beings are created for connection. So we heal in community. We need each other. Isolation is dangerous, and so that care and community is so important. And so we need to move towards people, not move away from them. And we need to move towards people with empathy and compassion, with an understanding of like what's actually going on below the surface of this. If I think about the church world, I think about the spiritual part of it too, that we don't war against flesh and blood, but against principalities. And so what does the Lord say about that? The only tool He gave us to fight this is the Word of God. So you've got to go to Scripture. When things are heavy, when things are hard, we got to go to the Word, the truth. So self-awareness, Enneagram, all this stuff is great, but the transformation that happens is when we activate the Word of God in our lives, and we stand from that place. So I think that's a huge component of holding space for people in the workplace, and understanding the battle that we're facing. Is it the person, or is it something different? The other thing I think to be mindful of is that when we ourselves get triggered, okay, when we get activated, when something happens and we don't like the way something landed, or we're fiery, we just get mad about something, that if there's a trigger, there's a wound. And in that wound, there's a need. What happened inside of that? So it is slowing things down on the personal side. So if you are really frustrated, or you're really overwhelmed, what's going on inside of that? Getting quiet, taking some time, processing it before we react, so that we can respond. And it doesn't blow things up necessarily the same way if we respond instead of react. So I think that when we're talking about people, we're very complex, and oftentimes diverse in community. And so inside of that, holding space for people to not always be okay, but holding people accountable towards growth.
I love that concept, Jackie, of holding space. How can we balance giving space to others to be healthy, while also not enabling behavior that may be moving them towards unhealth or holding them back?
Yes, accountability. That word nobody really likes, but that would be accountability. I think that sometimes we don't want to have the hard conversations because we don't like the way that it makes us feel, us being the key word. I don't like the way it makes me feel, so I'm not going to have the conversation. But with a lack of accountability, I think there's a lack of growth. And so I think accountability is key in all of our organizations, from the top down, and accountability in all different areas, whether it's accountability around producing what you were hired to produce, and that there's deadlines. And that, what I find often is that, especially in the church world, it's hard to hold people accountable because we don't have any leverage. What are we going to what are we going to do? Like, if they don't do it, then we don't know what to do about them not doing it. So how do we rectify that? What does that look like to have an accountability system where there's respect? It's not like dictatorship, but it's relational. So how do we do this well? I don't know. I have no answers for this. So I'm pushing it all back to you guys on this one. But when I work with teams, some of the tension is the accountability. How do I hold people accountable? And to move them towards growth so that they're not sitting in this place and we're allowing it to continue to fester.
Mm. I want to restate one thing you said, Jackie, because I'm an Enneagram too, that so often leaders, and we work with so many senior leaders in church space, executive directors,
Yes.
in nonprofit space, so many leaders carry things around they should have never picked up to begin with. And often it's a result of our type wiring, and understanding that helps us to release those things to the only one we should release those things to. And also, we've all got remarkable missions that we believe in and we're going after, and we're committing our lives to. Well, actually, often we forget that who we've committed our lives to, and we commit our lives to the mission.
Right.
And we forget that the mission is
Oh my
fruit.
gosh.
But so often we are so focused on those we are serving that we forget about the uniqueness of those we're serving with. Speak for a moment about how we have more empathy towards those we're serving with, and those we even might be struggling with today.
I think when it comes to empathy, attunement is key. So being able to attune to another person. And when we attune to somebody, this is not about trying to fix them or change them or save them or heal them or anything like this. This is truly like, I'm trying to learn about you. I'm trying to hear where you're coming from. I'm trying to lean in and better understand you as you. And so with healthy attunement, then you begin to walk with people and change happens, because we want to be celebrated, not tolerated. So if people in your organization feel tolerated by you, you're never going to get the best out of them.
Right.
And when I mean celebrated, it doesn't mean praised and like slap on the back, good job. It means I see you, I value you, I'm trying to understand you. So you feel seen, you feel heard, you feel understood in your environment. When that is happening, that is a game changer. That is a game changer, whether it's happening in our homes, when our spouses feel seen, heard, and understood by us, or vice versa. When our children, when they feel seen, heard, and seen, heard, and understood by us, total game changer in parenting. And then also in our work environments and our friendships, we want to be around people that like to be around us. Like we're going to move towards people that actually we feel like they like us. And so I think when it comes to teams, building cultures around understanding vision for sure, but understanding each other. And then also back to that purpose. Like, why are we doing this? We're not doing this for the vision of the church. We're doing this for the King of Kings, for the Lord of Lords.
Right.
Like keep first what needs to be first, which is the Lord in all of the work that you do.
Yeah, that's a good word, because as we steward leaders on our teams and volunteers in nonprofits and churches, we want to celebrate them, not tolerate them. You've given me a new question. Often we'll ask when we're on site with an organization, what are you tolerating right now? And it's been a powerful question for us. But how about who are you tolerating? And is there a pathway towards celebrating them? I think that's a great question.
I think too, and why? So why are you tolerating? And like the unpacking of that, because sometimes like people will function according to the expectation.
Yeah.
Like I remember going back into the workforce and my husband was like, "Oh, she's so fun. You're gonna have so much fun." Da 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 da. Whatever about me, and I was like, I think I got more in me than fun. Like I really think that there's more charge in me. And as a 7, everybody's like, "Oh, fun, whatever." But I knew I had more in me. So if all you expected was fun, I think you'd miss out on all of the rest that I had to offer. So it's like, don't put people in boxes, but try to see them as more than that. Like does that make sense? Like I want to pull out when I see things in people. I'm like, I see this in you, man. I want to put a magnifying glass on that. I want to explore what this looks like. Like, how do we help you see that we see you in this way?
Yeah.
Because it just changes, people, how we treat people matters, And so if you're tolerating somebody, they feel it.
We often say that people will live up to or down to your opinion of them. That's another
Absolutely.
way of saying that. Also, we say that personalities drive structure. And
Mhm,
when you truly understand the personalities of your team, it will
mhm,
help you build the right scaffolding around the team to
mhm,
support and make that team even more remarkable. So,
mhm,
Jackie, this is amazing stuff. As I said, we could talk for
mhm.
another 2 hours, 3 hours
Yeah.
on this, and I
Mhm.
wouldn't get one out. You might, I doubt it.
I
It's,
love it.
it's great. But as we close, two things.
Mhm,
For the person who already knows about the Enneagram,
mhm,
what's a favorite exercise that they can do today to
mhm,
continue to deepen their understanding of the Enneagram?
mhm,
And for those that are just starting to learn about it, what can they do today?
mhm. So those that are just starting to learn about it, I think that you can get a book and read about it. There's so many great social media outlets right now that have some great content on it. I'm on socials, Enneagram with JB. I post every single day to help you guys learn more about yourselves in a really practical way. Like, what do I do with this information as well? So I think that if you're just starting out, you could start there. If you are well versed in the Enneagram and you want to dive deeper into this, I do think like The Wisdom of the Enneagram is a great book. I have a card deck out. I never intended to push any of my stuff, but I'm like, as you ask that question, I'm like, oh, there's some
Please push it.
tools out there that are helpful. So I do have an Enneagram card deck called Enneagram Essentials, and it's
Mm,
125 cards for self awareness and growth. And inside of that deck, there's questions that go deeper. Into the Enneagram to help you reflect on how this is showing up in your life. And that's what I
mm,
would want for people that are on the journey of self-awareness. Get a coach if you want to coach, or do the
mm,
work by yourself, but dive deeper into it. Not just the surface of like, this is what it says about me, but why? Dive down into the why. Why am I doing this? I've been doing
mm,
this a long time. I feel like every single week I encounter another why question of
mm.
myself. Like, that's interesting. I wonder why I just did that. So curiosity is key for you to stay open towards growth.
That's great. You've got some amazing books, and you mentioned some of those resources out there, including one on the topic of the Enneagram and your marriage.
I do.
And I got to
Hmm.
tell you, I'm married to a Enneagram 6 Wing 5,
Hmm.
and us learning the differences in
Mm.
our
Hmm.
personalities has been transformational
Hmm.
in our marriage. So I would recommend getting a hold of Jackie's book. You said Enneagram with JB, right?
It's
That's
Enneagram
the
with JB. Hmm.
Great.
Yes.
So
Hmm.
go check out Jackie's stuff, but most of all, be committed to take another step towards a greater
Hmm.
level of self awareness today. Jackie, you're a wealth of knowledge. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and insights today. I hope we get to talk again soon. Really appreciate all the work you're doing. Thanks for being with us.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation and there was something in it for you. You probably learned more about me and my Enneagram type than you needed to, but you know that if you reach out to me today, I'm going to want to help you. And there's another leader you're probably thinking about who really needs to hear this conversation. And maybe there's another leader out there that thinks you really need to hear this conversation. So share it, please subscribe, and until next time, stay curious and reach for the remarkable.